Vlad. I'm going to do a very quick one for you as well.
Hey, thank you very much. I will appreciate it. Can you hear me?
No problem. Yes, no problem.
Oh,
So this scene, I see you purposely made it more reflective.
actually, that floor was reflective. I haven't changed anything on the floor.
So
Very well.
this is the environment my students use to learn how to correct materials because this is not set up correctly. So you kept the original material. Um, that's not really how materials work. So
Mhm.
an environment like this isn't metal everywhere. Even if you look at the texture, they are incorrect, which I teach in my course in this environment, how you go in and correct it. The metal is only supposed to be certain areas, first of all, right? This is metal. Uh, this is supposed to be metal. You don't
Mm.
really want it to be this metal and reflective. Now, what's the number one reason I don't think you should have all this reflectiveness? Can you guess?
I'm thinking you'll get too much light in the scene. You'll get the flatness at some point.
So if you ever work in a any game anyway, you're gonna if it's too reflective, you depend on the reflective probes to make some light because reflectiveness doesn't bounce as much as it does white surface. So not only is it reflective, it's dark, so there's very little light going on. It's really just reflection. Okay, we can see here the light is hitting here. It doesn't actually hit here. This is just reflection. You can see here it's less reflected here, so the light is hitting here. You can see the same thing going on here. So reflectiveness is very important to be very considerate about. It's better to have less reflectiveness and more roughness to get the lighting up and running and bouncing around. So this is also from a game point of view, optimization super expensive because you're paying a reflection cost generally speaking, when you have it everywhere. Make sense?
Yep.
How did you end up with green, blue, orange, and I think
And
there's
a bit
another
of
color
yellow
on the
in the
left side?
background. There's a bit of yellow in the background as well, in the far away. Well, from color theory, I think it's pleasing to the eye to have these colors. They are friendly, first of all.
And it's just supposed to be a friendly place.
Well, it's an exploration place. We don't know yet. We need to go to the other room to see. So
So
far,
as a lighting artist, we also have to look at the environment. So this has a broken door. So now I'm being very picky on purpose, just so everyone can get the context here. This has a broken door. It's snowing in. If I assign you this level as an art director, do you think I would want it to look friendly, or do you think I would want it to be abandoned or scary or something? Not that you're doing anything wrong, but stereotypically, what do you think I would have
yeah,
asked you to do?
I know what you mean. It's a discrepancy between colors, the theme of the colors, and the environment itself.
Also, this one is super bright. This one is just there. Normally, this should have been bright as well, or just off in generally, personally speaking, anyway. Um, it's not really a good idea. Let me look at your. Because you used this as a reference, didn't you?
Yeah, more to pick the mood and color palette.
Hmm. So I want you to look at how it's very, bright areas are very specific. They go fade, and then there's darkness, and there's little light, and then there's more darkness, and there's hotspot of white light here. Look at how diffuse the color is. Also look at, the reflection is very specific to very specific areas. If you wanted to copy that, you don't necessarily see a lot there. It's also more white on purpose because it will bounce a little bit anyway if it's not 100% reflective. So it's all it's within gray, white kind of range. It's not totally black basically, and it's hotspot of lighting. Um, so why am I picking this out? Because here everything is very bright. This one is also very It's a very clean render. I have to say it's a very clean render. But in terms of color, personally speaking, I would be picking less color, and not too many colors. Why? We call it the Christmas tree effect in in the lighting community, when we give this critique. So why is it called the Christmas tree effect? Because you have blue, green, orange. You start having the color palette of a Christmas tree. Make sense?
Yeah.
And I recommend keeping maybe one or two primary colors, and I would have picked probably that sunlight a bit more. Sometimes this looks okay and good. Don't get me wrong, but I think you could have done even better job in reducing the color palette a little bit, understanding where the brightest spots want to be. So I'm gonna ask you a little bit about that as well. Um, where would you want the brightest spot to be of all these light sources you have going on?
Well, considering that I want, let's say, the player to explore the place, I want something coming from the left side and a bit on the center where the light is, where the light fixture is. Those would
Okay,
be the brightest spots. So some rays coming from the left and center between the generators, let's call them.
okay. And so here's the thing with I don't know if you have. When is the last time you've been and looked at the sunset? Actually, let's just look at your reference. Do you see
Much,
this is much brighter than your version?
yeah, it is much brighter. Yeah.
It should be more towards this direction, even more actually. But this is what I had time to do before the stream started. But I also would maybe not have it all this brightness everywhere. I would be making it a bit darker some places, probably have a more neutral color in the beginning, um, and kind of focus on getting the values correct. So I would be darkening some areas after making it brighter. So I would be making this maybe darker, this darker, maybe this bit brighter. Probably not too much reflection. It's a bit too much. And the reason I think it's too much is because when you look at your images, it reflects everywhere and it takes a lot of attention away from what you maybe want to show. Here you
Mhm.
can see it's very difficult. It flattens the image. It. I have very trouble. It's also because you picked a wide lens, obviously, but it's also very difficult is how far this is apart, but where this ends. But that's the job of a lighting artist. We want to make sure things are, a clear shape, clear form, contrast. I don't have a big problem here, but I would have liked maybe some brightness here would have been cool. I think it would have worked well if you were doing this kind of stuff. So, for example, in this example, maybe you would have gone and say, okay, listen, we need to have um, some variance. So, what's the most brightest? It's a decision you would have to make. But because you already have very bright emissive light, and I don't want to spend too much time editing, I would have gone like this. Okay.
Mhm.
Now you have a very clear focal point, right? You don't necessarily have a focal point here. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. It's the same here as well. There's a light here, there's light there, or it's dark, it's the same value. It doesn't really matter what value you pick, which is also what I want to explain to everyone. It doesn't matter if I brighten and darken the image. If your base value is already very all over the place, it's going to look the same whether you brighten or darken. And in my course, we teach about exposure based on EV and realistic lighting. So I would have first asked you to make sure this is balanced, and then we will use a curve and different settings to kind of control the camera. So if you're in one part of the room, it will brighten. If you're outside, it will even out. If you're in the corridor, it will do something else. So you stay with one lighting and you don't have to tweak a lot. So that's some of the things we do in my course as well, um, which is what we do in this area. obviously as well. Um, so here it's the same thing with having some brightness, having some darkness, taking charge of your reflection a little bit. Does that make sense at all?
Yep. Yes.
Because here I would have turned on the blue even, and I would maybe have this warm light come in. That's a different choice again. But having a lot of bright spot everywhere and not having the wall bright enough is a discrepancy, and that's where the balance between emissiveness and the bright sources comes in, right? Um, so
Mm-hmm.
again, overall, I think it's a very clean render though. I think it's a clean render in the sense that it's reflective. In a way, it's cool, but it's just very dark. It's not the easiest scene to light, first of all, because the materials are dark. It's set up wrong and everything. I think this one is more closer because it's already dark here. But again, you have some reflection. You can see the reflection here. Question is, do you want it? Don't you want it? So yeah, overall, I think it's a good progress, um, and I think hopefully the reflection is useful for you. The
Yes.
feedback is useful. I'm not going to go to the other stuff because this is your best so far. So I would focus on this one. Uh, okay.
Yep. That's really appreciated. Thank you very much.